Governor, what's your impression of the court's opinion?
Well, I think that the court's opinion, which in effect and in essence accepts partly what the legislature did, is a major step toward a fair apportionment of the seats in the legislature. The court has taken the House side of the 67 Senator bill, which was passed in the legislature, and the court has taken the Senate side of the Webb-Crawford bill. The court is satisfied completely with the House side, but they say that additional adjustments need to be made in the Senate side of the Webb-Crawford bill, and they expect the 63 legislature apparently to complete the job. But in essence, the court has accepted what the legislature has done, and this is a victory for the legislature, and this means that the people of Alabama will have a fair voice in the passage of the laws in our legislature. I think one of the most important aspects of the court's opinion is that the court has held that in neither the House or the Senate can you apportion on a strictly population basis. You have to take into consideration other factors, and I think that's a victory for the people of Alabama. And that ensures that everybody in Alabama, no matter where he lives, no matter whether he lives in a big county or a little county, his vote will count something in the legislature. If you took a strictly population basis and divided up the seats on a population basis, 8 counties in Alabama would control completely both houses of the legislature. And that's discrimination, and that's bad, and we don't want that. And I don't think the court wants that either. That's just as bad as the rural counties controlling completely the legislature. These 8 big counties, Birmingham, Montgomery, Mobile, the big cities, they are certainly entitled to help govern the state of Alabama. But they are not, of course, entitled to govern Alabama. Everybody's vote should count something. Everybody in the legislature, no matter how big the county he comes from, his vote should mean something and be worth something when it's cast in the legislature. That's what we are driving at, and I believe in essence the court has agreed to that proposition. I think, considering the bill as a whole, I think it's a fair bill. It's a step in the right direction. A lot of folks are going to be disappointed. Some of them who ran for office are not going to take their seat, and I regret that, because the court should have put this thing off to 1966. Nevertheless, I think in essence it's a major step in the right direction.
Governor, can you explain exactly what this bill you just signed will do?
This bill, which I have just signed, provides for special primary elections to take care of the order which the federal court has issued changing the apportionment of the seats in the legislature for the November elections of this year. The reason that this bill was introduced and the reason that I signed the bill was to ensure that if any counties or districts got added representation or lost some, that there would be fair elections in the counties and districts so the people would have a chance to vote on who would serve in the legislature, to prevent the hand-picking of legislators by Democratic or Republican or party committees. Now, the way this bill works, if any county gains additional seats in the legislature, then they'll hold primary elections in that county to determine who the nominees will be for the additional seats to serve in the next legislature of Alabama. For instance, Birmingham or Jefferson County gains 10 new House seats. There'll be a primary election in Jefferson County to determine who these 10 will be. There'll be runoffs, of course, if necessary, to ensure that everybody gets a majority of the vote that's elected. Also, where counties or districts lose representation in the legislature, there'll be a primary election to see who will have to drop out from those who have already been elected for the November general election. This bill, in effect, ensures that in those counties and districts where they gain legislators or lose legislators, the people or the voters will decide who will serve in the legislature rather than party committees. And I think it is a good bill and certainly a democratic piece of legislation.
I am convinced that the national image projected for Alabama is highly detrimental to our state. I believe that in the majority of instances, when Alabama is mentioned, there immediately flashes in the minds of most people who have not had an opportunity to know us a picture of a backward state. a state more dedicated to the suppression of the Negro race than it is to true progress or to the education of its children. A picture of a state engaged in raising cotton and corn by sharecroppers barefooted and in overalls, rather than the true picture of Alabama, the picture of a state engaged in the middle of the heart of the space race to the moon, with a booming electronics industry, a great steel industry, a modern seaport, and the beginnings of the finest space-age research facilities in the world. I take too much pride in my sectional and state heritage to abandon the principles which have made ours a determined people. On the other hand, I am concerned that a great danger exists in that many of our people are failing to see and understand the dramatic and fantastic changes that are so symbolic of our times. The change is economic, political, and social, and must be understood and recognized by all if we are to assume the industrial leadership which is within our realistic grasp. An image of Alabama has been forged deeply in the minds of people throughout the country. It is an incorrect one, created by the enemies of our way of life, but perpetuated to some extent by a head-in-the-sand attitude on the part of many, and the hot-headed, thoughtless, and lawless acts of a few provoked by a misguided minority. The fact that our enterprising forefathers were able to raise a dejected and devastated South to the point where industrialists and investors look toward this area as the land of golden opportunity convinces me that we can change the image of this state which is so prevalent in our nation today. The events of the past 2 decades depict dramatically a change in our economy from a tobacco road economy to a space-age economy. I sincerely believe that to improve the political climate of our state, we must first improve the economic understanding of the masses of the people of Alabama and then take an intelligent, effective political action. Economic illiteracy of the masses of the people, American people, combined with intellectual dishonesty and moral irresponsibility on the part of our political leaders, have brought us to a state of socialism that Karl Marx, even in his wildest dreams, never believed would be possible. We can ill afford to be represented by clowns in political office or irresponsible individuals or even by demagogues if we are to make true progress in the years to come.
In fact, 26% of the people of Alabama can elect a majority of both houses of our legislature. The people of this state need a fair say-so in the passage of the laws that they live under. Since the day that I first took office, reapportionment has been one of the chief goals of our administration. I want to remind you that we came within 2 or 3 votes of passing a fair reapportionment bill in the last session. We had a majority of votes in each house, but as you know, reapportionment requires constitutional amendments, and that requires a 3/5 vote of each house, which makes passage of any reapportionment bill somewhat difficult. At this time, I am considering calling a special session of the Alabama legislature to take up the matter of reapportionment. The U.S. Supreme Court had no business getting involved, in my opinion, in the matter of the apportionment of state legislatures. I feel like that by virtue of the decision the other day, and if they get into this field, they're going to find it very difficult, and the consequences might be grave. This is strictly the business of the individual states and their legislatures, and I think that we should wait no longer to get something done about this problem. After all, why should we here in Alabama have to have the federal courts to tell us what to do when our duty is so clearly spelled out in our state constitution? And the legislature should have been reapportioned a long time ago. What Alabama needs is a fair reapportionment, giving the heavily populated areas a fairer voice in the legislature, but maintaining certain safeguards to ensure that the people who live in the counties and own the farms are properly represented also.
Governor, in the light of this state's experience last year and in other similar cases, do you feel that Mississippi can successfully defy the federal courts?
I think that the fight that's going on in Mississippi today, that's being led by Governor Ross Barnett, is everybody's fight in the United States. I think the time has come and we can't back up no longer, and we've got to stand up for our rights. We have in this case a Supreme Court of 9 appointed judges who serve for life, having amended the Constitution of the United States themselves, issuing their decrees against the will of the majority of the people, and the federal government using force to cram these unconstitutional decrees down the throats of our people. We can't stand that. We can't take that if we want to have a democratic system in this country. And this fight had to be fought. And I think that every citizen in the United States ought to stand up and support and back Governor Barnett. And I feel like if they'll do that, that we'll win out in this fight, and it'll be a victory for the people.
I deplore those who have encouraged or demanded the sending of such troops, such as Eisenhower, Tricky Dick Nixon, Rockefeller, Jacob Javits, and the rest. And I'm reminded while I speak of Tricky Dick that about the last thing he did when he was the presiding officer of the Senate as the Vice President of the United States was to try to rape the Constitution of the United States, to change the rules of the Senate, and take from the South its great weapon of defense, the weapon of free speech in the United States Senate.
Mr. Long, how is the volume of passenger traffic in the Montgomery area now as compared to, say, a few years ago?
We have definitely had an increase in passenger business this summer as compared to last year. I would not say any substantial increase, but a worthwhile amount.
Well, what factors would you say may have caused this increase?
I believe the Seattle World's Fair has brought quite an increase in our travel to the far west. We've handled some additional military business, which has helped our business considerably also.
Well, how many passenger trains daily serve Montgomery?
The L Railroad has the Pan American, the Hummingbird daily, and we have number 1 and 4 operates north of Montgomery daily. We also have the South.
The first thing we're going to have to do in Montgomery in order to, that is, this is something that should take place in government at all levels. We've had an erosion of integrity in government all the way from the national level to many local levels. I don't have any particular group or governments in mind other than to say that this erosion of integrity has been evidenced by the 5%ers and the grafters and the chiselers and those who want to make an easy buck out of government. You know what I'm talking about. I don't have to draw you in a picture about that. But if we're going to have any leadership in Montgomery and in Alabama and the South and the nation that people are going to follow when they go to try to bring about a solution to the problems that we face, The first thing that the average man wants to know is, does he have an honest government? You know, the average person in Alabama thinks that all we do when we come to Montgomery is to steal. They think that when the legislature gets here and the governor gets here, they just begin to enrich their cronies and their friends. And you know, these good average voters are right in many instances, because that's what many people have gotten into government for. And those who have taken their places in government, whether it be this state or other states, city or county, and talk about states' rights and local government and preserving customs and traditions, and then themselves engage in activities designed to chisel the taxpayer and to enrich their friends, they themselves do more to destroy the rights of the states and local government than all the courts and the NAACP and this sorry crowd in Washington does. I'm going to ask these gentlemen in the legislature, the first thing I want them to do is to cut the appropriation to the governor's office. The governor's office can run on less money than it is running on. That saving will not be enough to solve the problem, but it will let the people know that we intend to handle their money right.
The senior senator from Alabama, the Honorable Lister Hill. Mr. Chairman, Congressman Grant, Congressman Roberts, distinguished guest, and my friends and fellow Democrats. My two good colleagues, Congressman Grant and Congressman Roberts, have thanked you for the very fine and wonderful support that you have given them. You've given me so much support for so long you've been so good to me, you've been so wonderful to me, that if I were to try to even thank you this afternoon, I would be speaking here until tomorrow morning, expressing my appreciation and the gratitude of my heart to you. Surely, I am delighted to be back with you in Covington County. My father used to say, the biscuits are bigger at home. And certainly there's no place where the biscuits are bigger or the people are finer than they are here in our own 2nd Alabama Congressional District. And I also want to tell you, as the head of the party in Alabama during the next year and the ensuing 4 years, I'm not going to swallow everything the National Democratic Party tries to ram down my throat. I'm going to stand up and cuss them out every time I feel like they ought to be cussed out, and I tell you I'm going to do that as your governor. I was in the Democratic Convention of 48. I visited every young Democrat convention until I was too old to belong to that group. I've been a delegate to 2 national conventions. I spoke for the party in 1960, and I want to tell you this. We people in the South have done more for the Democratic Party than any other section of these United States. Senator Hill and the congressmen here know that many times in their careers in the American Congress, had it not been for Southern members of the Congress, we'd have had one-party government in America, because there were no Democratic members in many years in the American Congress in any other part of the country except the southern part of the United States. Therefore, the Democratic Party owes us a lot. I say that for the simple reason that I'm going to criticize some of the actions of the party to try to impress upon the rank and file of this state that we don't agree with everything the National Democratic Party says. But let me, in hurrying along here, we people in the South, I like to remember our history and not try to be melodramatic, but it's our section that has done more, did more to formulate this republic and bring it into being than any other part of the nation.
Governor, have the events of the last few days in Mississippi had any effect on your own pledge to resist integration?
Well, when you say effect, I suppose do you mean that I've changed my stand? Of course not. I still intend to resist integration as governor of this sovereign state. And I feel that the events that have transpired in Mississippi ought to inform that crowd in Washington that the peoples in this section don't like to have this forced upon them, and maybe they ought to cool off up there and let us live in peace a while. But no, sir, I intend to continue to resist any integration attempt here in Alabama.
Well, in view of the manner in which the Mississippi crisis was handled by the federal government, do you think that the state could withstand federal pressures in a showdown?
Well, I don't know exactly what you mean by withstand federal pressures. Of course, if they send 10,000 troops into any place, they can have their way. But it's not voluntarily, and it's not through the will of the people there in Mississippi, and it wouldn't be in this state. But but I can tell you that this ought to impress them that the people here don't like to be run over.
Well, with regard to Mississippi, do you think that the violence there could have been prevented, and can it be prevented in Alabama?
Well, of course, I was not in Mississippi, and I would not like to say what I think or do not think, because I was not there, and all I know is what I read in the newspapers, and of course with some of the people reporting the news from over there, I don't know whether we got it straight or not, because most of the national news media and press and television are biased and prejudiced against this section of the country. But I am against violence, and I, of course, want to see law and order maintained. And that which transpired in Mississippi should indicate to those in Washington that any attempt by them in the future to do this to other states creates the condition that brings about the breakdown of law and order. The federal government and that crowd in Washington, they are responsible for the bloodshed in Mississippi, not the people of Mississippi. And I tell you, the President the other night piously stated that we must agree with laws, that we must obey laws we disagree with. But not one single time when the mass violation and flagrant violation of state and county and city law in Albany and Montgomery and Jackson by Martin Luther King did he ever open his mouth. The only difference is that Martin Luther King, he can do what he wants to do, but the people, the white people of Alabama and the South, of course, we must obey that which we disagree with, so he says.